This isn't a discussion, it's a legal order. We're closing this shop down.
No.
You guys see this, right? It's really happening.
No.
What's going on over there?
Is he recording Lee?
Yeah, it's viral. Check this out. You are safe here. Take your time, nurse.
Thank you. I don't know what to do anymore.
Just breathe. It's okay to feel this way. We'll get through it. Mr. Lee, the offer stands. This is your final chance. This shop is my history. I am not leaving.
The morning after my brother's funeral, the lock on his barbershop had already been changed. The flowers from the service were still damp on the sidewalk, their white ribbons dragging through the rain, but the key Bao had carried for 17 years would not turn in the door. I tried once, then again. The metal clicked against metal, useless and cold in my hand. Across the glass, his faded sign still read Bao's Cut and Shave, but underneath it, someone had taped a yellow notice over the hours he had written himself. Closed for non-payment. I stood there in my black coat with $40 in my purse, the same $40 I had not spent on a taxi from the cemetery because I thought walking would help me breathe. It did not. Behind me a car door closed. Victor Hale stepped under the awning holding a coffee cup like he had come to watch weather, not erase a dead man's life. He owned the building. He owned the laundromat next door, the empty bakery on the corner, and half the block that developers had started calling the next big opportunity. He looked at the notice, then at me. "Lynn," he said softly, "I was hoping you wouldn't make this harder." I did not answer. His wool coat was dry. Mine was soaked at the sleeves. "Your brother was 3 months behind," he continued. "I gave him chances. More than I should have." I looked through the glass at the dark shop. The waiting chairs were still pushed against the wall. A towel hung over the back sink. Bao's calendar, the one with red circles around rent days and doctor appointments, was still open to November. Nothing inside looked abandoned. It looked interrupted. "He buried his receipts in boxes," I said. "He never missed rent." Victor sighed, the way people sigh when they want witnesses to think they are being patient. "Good immigrants still have to pay rent, Lynn." The words landed clean and quiet. No shouting. No insult he could not deny later. Just enough to remind me what he thought I was worth. A man across the street raised his phone. Derek Mills, owner of the new grooming lounge 2 blocks over, pretended to check a message while recording me. I knew that smile. It was the kind people wore when someone else's grief looked useful. Victor slid a paper toward me. "You have no legal right to enter. If you remove anything, I'll report it as theft." I looked down. Near the bottom of the door, caught in the rainwater, was Bao's old black comb, cracked through the middle. I bent and picked it up before Victor could stop me. On the handle, under years of scratches, my brother had carved 3 tiny words I had never noticed before. Back mirror box. For the first time that morning, my hand stopped shaking. I kept the comb hidden in my palm all the way back to my studio apartment, as if Victor might follow me and take even that away. The bus windows were fogged from the rain, and my reflection looked older than 38. My hair was still pinned from the funeral. My shoes had cemetery mud dried along the edges. In my purse, the $40 was folded beside Bao's prayer card, the one the funeral home printed with his name slightly crooked. Bao Tran, beloved brother, friend and neighbor. They had left out the part where he had saved my life before I knew how to ask for saving. I was 21 when I arrived in Seattle in 2009 with 1 suitcase, 2 sweaters too thin for the Pacific Northwest, and English that broke apart whenever I was nervous. Bao was 34 then, already tired in the way immigrants become tired when they cannot afford to admit it. He met me at the airport with a paper sign that said "Little Sister" in black marker. I had not seen him in 7 years. He hugged me with one arm because his other hand was holding a bag of takeout noodles. "Eat first," he said. "Cry later." That was Bao. Practical tenderness. He let me sleep on a folding cot behind the barbershop for my first 6 months in America. At night, after the last customer left, he swept hair into careful piles, counted singles from the tip jar, and taught me words from appointment cards. Fade, trim, Rent. Receipt. Keep every receipt, he told me, tapping a shoebox under the counter. In this country, paper remembers when people lie. I thought of that shoebox now as I sat on the edge of my bed with the broken comb in my lap. Back mirror box. 3 words carved so small. They felt less like a message and more like a secret he had been too scared to say out loud. My phone buzzed. A notification from Derek's grooming lounge appeared because one of Bao's old customers had shared it. The video showed me standing outside the locked shop in the rain. The caption read, "Some businesses close because the city moves forward. Others close because they never learned how to keep up." I watched it once. Then I watched Victor in the corner of the frame, smiling like a man who knew the ending before anyone else did. I opened Bao's prayer card again. Behind it, in my purse, was the old spare key that no longer worked. Then I remembered something from the week before he died. Bao had called me late, his voice low over the sound of clippers. "If anything happens," he said, "do not trust Victor." At the time I thought he was tired. Now I understood. He had been warning me. By morning, Derek's video had more views than Bao's shop had ever had customers in a month. I watched it from the back booth of a diner near Rainier Avenue, where the coffee tasted burned and the waitress kept refilling my cup without asking. The screen showed me exactly as he wanted people to see me. Small, wet, confused, standing outside a locked door like someone who had arrived too late to matter. The comments were worse because they sounded casual. "Old shops die. That block needs something better. If he could not pay rent, that is business." No one wrote Bao's name. They wrote the place, the old shop, that immigrant barber. I closed the phone and pressed my thumb against the broken comb until the cracked teeth marked my skin. Bao had cut hair for men who paid him with quarters, for mothers who brought their sons before job interviews, for students who needed to look clean for immigration appointments. He had stayed open late when the buses ran slow. He had taken less money when someone was short. Now one video had buried him a second time, and this time people were helping with shovels made of words. I walked to the credit union where Bao kept his business account. The lobby smelled like wet coats and printer ink. A young teller looked at my identification, the death certificate, and Bao's account number written in my careful handwriting. Her smile faded into something trained and polite. "I am sorry, Miss Tran, but I cannot release full account details unless you are listed as an authorized party." I nodded because I had expected that. "Can you tell me if there were rent payments?" She hesitated. Her eyes moved to the manager's office, then back to the screen. "I cannot discuss specifics." Her fingers stopped on the keyboard. "But there are several large withdrawals marked as advance rent." Advance rent. The words opened a quiet door inside my chest. "How recent?" I asked. She swallowed. "You need an attorney or a state representative." Then she printed a general account summary and slid it toward me with one sentence circled in blue ink. "Cashier's check issued to V. Hale Properties." Outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. I stood under the credit union awning and looked at that line until the numbers blurred. Bao had not been 3 months behind. Bao had paid ahead. My phone buzzed from an unknown number. The message was short. "Your brother paid that rent. Look behind what he looked at every day." I read it twice. Then I looked toward the dark barbershop down the street, toward the mirrors inside that had watched Bao work for 17 years. The text message gave me the courage to do one small thing before fear talked me out of it. I took the $40 from my purse and laid the bills on my kitchen table beside Bao's cracked comb, the credit union summary, and the spare key that no longer opened anything. For $10 bills. That was all the cash I had until my next housekeeping shift paid on Friday. I could have bought groceries. I could have paid part of my phone bill. Instead, I walked to the discount store 3 blocks from my apartment and bought a pack of white towels, a bottle of glass cleaner, a roll of tape, and one warm sandwich from the deli counter, because Bao used to say bad decisions always sounded smarter on an empty stomach. The cashier asked if I wanted a bag. I said no. I carried everything against my chest through the mist like it was inventory for a real business. Then I went to find Mr. Han. His locksmith shop sat between a tax office and a small Korean bakery, with brass keys hanging in the window like tiny warning bells. He had been one of Bao's regulars for 12 years. When his wife was sick, Bao cut his hair every other Sunday and refused payment. Mr. Han looked older than I remembered, but when I placed Bao's comb on his counter, He did not ask for proof of grief. He only took off his glasses. Victor changed the front lock, I said. I know. His voice was flat. He called me first. I refused. I showed him the death certificate, the old spare key, and the line from the credit union summary. He read it slowly. Then he reached under the counter for a ring of tools. Back door, he asked. There is an alley. He closed his shop for lunch and walked with me. At the barbershop, the front window still carried Victor's yellow notice, but the alley door behind the trash bins had the same old lock Bao used for deliveries. Mr. Han worked in silence. 1 turn. 2. The door opened with a tired wooden sigh. Inside, the shop smelled like dust, old shampoo, and my brother's winter jacket. I turned on the lights. 1 bulb flickered. 1 stayed dark. I set the towels on the counter, cleaned the front mirror, and taped a handwritten sign to the glass. Open Saturday. Pay what you can. As I wiped the back mirror, my cloth caught on a tiny black mark near the frame. Not dirt. Ink. 3 letters written by Bao's hand. L. T. B. Saturday came with low clouds and the kind of cold that made people keep their hands inside their sleeves. I arrived before sunrise because I did not want the first customer to see me wondering whether anyone would come. The shop looked almost clean if I stood in the right place. The towels were folded. The mirrors were clear. The yellow notice was still on the front window, but my paper sign covered half of it. Open Saturday. Pay what you can. I made coffee in Bao's old machine even though I had never liked the taste. He used to say coffee was not for pleasure in a small business. It was for staying upright. At 9 o'clock, no one came. At 9:30, the street was still empty except for buses hissing at the corner. I told myself I had done enough. I had opened the door. That alone had taken everything I had. Then the bell above the entrance gave 1 weak ring. Carlos Alvarez stepped in wearing a rain jacket and a delivery bag across his shoulder. Bao had cut his hair every month for years. Carlos looked at the mirrors, then at me, and removed his cap. Your brother let me owe him $27 last winter, he said. He placed crumpled bills on the counter. I came to pay him back. My throat tightened, but I only nodded. Before I could speak, Mina Santos came in carrying a plastic container of chicken soup from the Filipino restaurant down the block. He never charged my nephew before job interviews, she said. Today you eat. Then came Tesfaye, a graduate student from Ethiopia, thin and serious, holding his phone like evidence. Behind him came Oksana with her 12-year-old son, his blonde hair falling into his eyes. Bao said a first haircut in America should not feel lonely, she said quietly. I did not know if I was ready to cut anyone's hair. My hands remembered towels, keys, hotel bedsheets, not clippers. But Carlos sat down first and pointed to the smallest trim. Just make me look less tired, he said. Everyone laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it gave us permission to breathe. I worked slowly. Too slowly. Bao's old clippers hummed in my hand like a nervous animal. When I finished, Carlos looked in the mirror and smiled just enough. He taught you more than you think. By noon there were 5 people waiting. No one had much money, but everyone brought something. Cash. Food. A story. A photograph. Then Tesfaye showed me a video from 2 years earlier. The day Bao cut his father's hair before his citizenship ceremony. In the reflection behind Bao, Victor Hale stood near the back counter, taking a thick white envelope from my brother's hand. By late afternoon, the shop was full enough to feel alive and quiet enough to hear danger before it entered. The bell above the door rang once, sharp and clean. Victor Hale stepped inside with a man in a gray suit carrying a leather folder. Derek followed them wearing a black coat and the careful smile of someone who had already written the story in his head. The room changed. Carlos stopped drinking his coffee. Mina lowered the soup container lid. Tesfaye slipped his phone into his hand but did not raise it. Victor looked around at the folded towels, the customers, the open register, and my handwritten sign. His mouth tightened for half a second before the polite mask returned. Lynn, he said. This is not wise. The man beside him opened the leather folder. Miss Tran, you are occupying this property without authorization. V. Hale Properties is prepared to begin formal removal proceedings if you do not vacate within 48 hours. He placed a paper on the counter where Bao used to keep peppermints for children. I read the first line. Notice to cease unauthorized commercial activity. My name looked strange inside their words, like they had dressed it in someone else's crime. My brother paid rent, I said. Victor gave a small, disappointed smile. Your brother told many people many things. Derek looked at the waiting chairs and shook his head softly. I am willing to take some of this old equipment off your hands before it becomes a legal mess, he said. Cash today. No questions. I looked at him then. Not at his haircut, not at his expensive boots, not at the phone half hidden in his palm. I looked at the reflection behind him. The back mirror. The same mirror from Tesfaye's video. The same mirror Bao had faced every day. Oops. The letters near the frame pulled at my thoughts. Look behind what he looked at every day. I did not answer Derek. I folded the notice once and placed it beside Carlos's $27. Victor leaned closer. Do not confuse sympathy with ownership, Lynn. People came today because they feel sorry for you. By Monday they will move on. No one spoke. That silence hurt more than if they had defended me. Not because they were afraid for themselves, but because Victor had money, paper, and a suit, and all I had was a room full of people who had already spent too many years being careful. When they left, the shop felt smaller. I locked the front door, turned off the open sign, and stayed. Alone after dark. I replayed Tesfaye's video until the battery on my phone turned red. Bao stood in front of the back mirror. Victor took the envelope. Bao glanced once at the frame, exactly where the ink mark was. I found a screwdriver in the bottom drawer. The first screw came out easily. The second stuck. The third fell into the sink. When the mirror finally shifted forward, dust poured down like gray snow. Behind it was a narrow wooden box taped to the wall. My name was written across the lid in Bao's handwriting. The wooden box was lighter than I expected, and that made me afraid of it. Heavy things felt useful. Light things could disappoint you. I set it on the counter beneath the one working bulb and peeled away the old tape with my fingernail. Bao had written my name in black marker, careful and square. The way he wrote appointment cards when he did not want customers to misunderstand him. Inside was a stack of papers wrapped in a plastic grocery bag, a small silver flash drive, and an envelope with my name on it. I touched the envelope last. First, I unfolded the papers. Lease agreement. Renewal option. Payment addendum. Cashier check receipt. Hale Properties. 18 months advance rent. My eyes moved from line to line, slow at first, then faster, until the room seemed to tilt without moving. Bao had not fallen behind. Bao had paid ahead. Not 1 month. Not 3. 18. The next page was an email from Victor. Payment received. Renewal terms confirmed. Thank you, Bao. I read that sentence 3 times because it sounded too clean for the dirty thing it proved. My hand stayed steady until I picked up the flash drive. A strip of tape across it said, "For Lynn, only if they lock me out." I found Bao's old laptop under the front desk, the one with a cracked corner and a missing letter on the keyboard. It took 5 minutes to start. It made a tired humming sound, like the clippers did before they warmed up. The flash drive opened to 3 folders. Rent. Victor. Transfer. In the Victor folder, there was an audio file dated 2 weeks before Bao died. I pressed play. Bao's voice filled the empty shop, low and calm. I paid you because you said the renewal would be safe. Then Victor's voice answered, smooth and annoyed. The block is changing, Bao. The developer wants clean delivery. You and I both know your little shop does not fit the future. Bao said. My lease says I stay. Victor laughed once. Paper protects people who can afford lawyers. I stopped the recording there. The silence afterward felt larger than the room. In the transfer folder, I found the final document. Bao had signed the business over to me 3 days before he died. I was not trespassing. I was not begging for my brother's memory. I was the legal owner of Bao's Cut and Shave. Only then did I open the envelope. His letter was short. Little sister, if you are reading this, I failed to tell you in time. Do not make this shop mine. Make it yours. I sat on the floor until sunrise with the paper spread around me like a map back to myself. At 7:15 I photographed every page, copied the audio file, and sent everything to the community attorney Mina had given me. Then I texted Victor one sentence. Tomorrow morning. My shop. Bring Derek. Victor arrived at 9 in the morning with Derek beside him in confidence, walking half a step ahead of both of them. The rain had stopped, but the street still shone like black glass. I had opened the blinds. I had swept the floor. I had placed Bao's cracked comb, the $40, and the stack of papers on the front counter where every customer used to pay. Carlos stood near the coffee machine. Mina sat by the window with her hands folded over her purse. Tesfaye leaned against the wall, his phone face down but ready. Beside me stood Elaine Porter, the community attorney Mina had called before sunrise. She was small, silver-haired, and carried no briefcase, only a yellow legal pad and a calm expression that made Victor look at her twice. Derek saw the people first. Then he saw the papers. His smile thinned. "I thought this was a private meeting," Victor said. "So did my brother," I answered. The room went quiet. Elaine introduced herself and asked Victor whether he wished to repeat his claim that Bao owed 3 months of rent. Victor adjusted his cuffs. "My records speak for themselves." "Good," Elaine said. "So do ours." I placed the lease agreement on the counter, then the renewal addendum, then the cashier check receipt, then the printed email with Victor's name at the bottom. "Payment received. Renewal terms confirmed. Thank you, Bao." Victor's face did not change at first. That was the most frightening part. A man like him did not panic when he was caught. He calculated how much the truth would cost. Derek looked at the door. Tesfaye picked up his phone. "You may want to stay," Elaine said to Derek. "Your public video made several claims about this business that appear to be false." Derek laughed once, but it sounded dry. I shared what I was told. I plugged Bao's flash drive into the old laptop. The speakers crackled. Then Bao's voice filled the shop. "I paid you because you said the renewal would be safe." Victor's recorded voice followed. "The block is changing, Bao. The developer wants clean delivery. You and I both know your little shop does not fit the future." No one moved. Outside, a bus sighed at the curb and pulled away. Victor stared at the laptop as if silence could erase sound. Elaine wrote one sentence on her pad. "Miss Tran is the legal owner of this business," she said. "Any further attempt to remove her without proper process will be answered formally." I slid the $40 across the counter toward Victor. "You said this would not reopen a dead man's shop." Then I picked up the new key Mr. Han had cut for me. "You were right. It opens mine." Derek stepped back first. Victor followed slower, leaving his yellow notice on the floor where it had fallen. I did not pick it up. I took down Bao's old sign while everyone watched, not because I wanted to erase him, but because I finally understood his letter. He had not left me a shrine. He had left me a beginning. 3 months later, the new sign arrived on a Thursday afternoon, wrapped in brown paper and carried in by Mr. Han and Carlos like it weighed more than wood. I had painted the front wall myself the night before. One slow coat of cream over years of scratches, tape marks, and the shadow left behind by Bao's old sign. I thought I would cry when we took the paper off. I did not. The letters were simple and black. $40 Barbershop. Underneath, in smaller words, formerly Bao's Cut and Shave. Mina stood by the window with soup in her hands. Tesfaye recorded quietly, not for the internet this time but for me. Oksana's son swept the floor without being asked, pushing hair into neat little piles the way Bao used to. Elaine had made Victor sign a corrected lease after the civil complaint began. He did not apologize. Men like Victor rarely give you that gift. Derek closed his grooming lounge 6 weeks later and posted a long statement about misunderstanding the situation. I did not read all of it. I had towels to fold. The shop was not suddenly successful in the way people imagine success. The heater still clicked too loudly. The back sink still leaked if I turned the handle too far. Some days I made enough to cover bills. Some days I counted quarters in the drawer after dark and reminded myself that survival was also a kind of profit. But the door opened every morning. That mattered. I hired Amir, a young barber from Syria who had arrived in Canada first, then moved south to stay with cousins in Washington. On his first day, he stood too straight, as if one mistake might send him back into a life he had worked hard to leave. I showed him Bao's cracked comb in the small frame behind the counter, beside the first $40 and the sentence from my brother's letter. "Do not make this shop mine. Make it yours." Amir read it twice. Then he nodded like he understood more than English could hold. That evening after closing, the rain returned. I had already turned off the front lights when a man knocked softly on the glass. He was about my age, with a wet jacket, tired eyes, and a folded bus transfer in his hand. "I lost my job today," he said when I opened the door. "I have $12. I have an interview tomorrow." I looked at the clock, then at the empty chair, then at the street shining dark beyond him. Bao was gone. I could not bring him back. I could not fix every life that walked through that door. But I could keep the light on a little longer. I stepped aside and let the man in. "Sit down," I said. "Pay what you can today. Come back when life is kinder."